My ex-stepmom suddenly wants to reconnect when she found out I'm successful after 6 years of no contact, and after she ruined my childhood. So I stranded her and her husband in Greece with no return ticket. I, 28F, thought I had finally escaped my past. I built a new life, changed my name, moved across the country, and spent years in therapy trying to heal from the nightmare that was my childhood. But somehow the past found me anyway. My biological mom died when I was 4. Cancer. My dad remarried when I was 6 to a woman I'll call Diane, 48F. For about a year, things were okay. Then my dad died in an industrial accident when I was 8, leaving me alone with Diane, who quickly remarried to her ex-boyfriend Rick, 50 million. That's when my life turned into a living nightmare. Both of them were hardcore alcoholics, not the functioning kind. I'm talking drinking from morning till night, passing out on the couch, waking up and starting all over again. The life insurance money my dad left was supposed to be for my care and education. Instead, they blew through most of it in under 2 years on alcohol, Rick's gambling habit, and a house they eventually remortgaged to pay for their addictions. By the time I was 10, they started forcing me to earn my keep. It began with cleaning houses in the neighborhood. I'd go to school with bruises on my knees from scrubbing floors for hours. If I didn't clean to their standards, I wouldn't get dinner that night. I never saw a penny of the money. It all went straight into their pockets and then into bottles of cheap vodka. As I got older, the work got worse. When I was 12, they started loaning me out to Rick's business associates, a network of sketchy people who owned small businesses around town. I was nothing but cheap labor to them. There was this one restaurant owner who would make me wash dishes in scalding hot water without gloves until my hands were raw and bleeding. When I cried from the pain, he'd threatened to tell Rick I was being difficult, which I knew would mean a beating when I got home. I'd work from right after school until 2 or 3 a.m., then go to school the next day, barely able to keep my eyes open. Teachers would ask why I was so tired, but I was too terrified to tell the truth. When I was 13, they sent me to work at a junkyard owned by one of Rick's drinking buddies. I was made to sort through sharp metal scraps without proper gloves or tetanus shots. I still have scars all over my hands from that job. I once sliced my arm open on a piece of rusted metal, and instead of taking me to a hospital, Diane poured some whiskey on it and taped it shut with duct tape. It got infected, and I ended up with a fever of 103 degrees for days. They still made me work. The winter I was 14, they sent me to work for a man who owned a decrepit motel on the highway. My job was to clean rooms, and the conditions were horrific. Rooms were often filled with drug paraphernalia, bodily fluids, and things I still can't talk about without shaking. The motel owner would stand in the doorway watching me clean, making comments about my appearance that made my skin crawl. When I told Diane, she just laughed and said, "That's how you know you're doing a good job." I was also forced to work at a slaughterhouse when I was 15. The smell and the sounds still haunt my nightmares. They had me cleaning gore from the floors and machinery with industrial chemicals that burned my lungs. No mask, no protection. I developed chronic bronchitis that winter that went untreated for months. I would cough so hard I'd vomit, and they'd just hand me a mop to clean it up and tell me to get back to work. The worst was the isolated farm I mentioned before. The owners were friends with Rick, and they paid him a premium for my labor because I was young and strong. I'd be dropped off Friday after school and picked up Sunday night, working nearly 20 hours each day. I slept in an unheated shed with rats and farm equipment. In winter, I'd wake up with frost on my blanket. They barely fed me, usually just scraps from their own meals, saying I needed to earn proper food. By the time that I was 16, things got a lot worse after they started suddenly renting me more to old men's. They keep looking at my body in a sexualized way and keep making some weird noises. Despite only being freaking 16, one day when I was cleaning this old drunk man house, he suddenly started touching my private areas. When I tried to stop him, he got angry and pinned me to the ground and jumped over me. He was trying to take my virginity. While he was taking my clothes off, I managed to hit him. In the nuts, giving me enough time to run away. When I got back home and explained to my stepmom why I was early, I was expecting some concern or some comforting, just a tiny bit. But do you know what I got? A bad beating, and the reason is that I didn't get her money. I was heartbroken. This scenario kept happening more often afterwards. I survived by focusing on school. Education was my only way out, and I studied whenever I wasn't being forced to work. My teachers noticed I was smart, but didn't know the extent of the abuse. One English teacher, Ms. Williams, suspected something was wrong and tried to help, giving me extra food and sometimes letting me sleep in her classroom during lunch when I was exhausted. At 17, I secretly applied to colleges as far away as possible. When I received a full scholarship to a university 2,000 miles away, I hid the acceptance letter and made plans. I had been secretly squirreling away tiny amounts of money for years. Quarters I'd find in sofa cushions while cleaning houses, a few dollars here and there from people who would slip me tips when Rick and Diane weren't looking. I had about $300 hidden in a hollow book. When I finally told them I was leaving for college, Rick threw an empty whiskey bottle at my head. It missed, barely, and Diane slapped me so hard my eardrum ruptured. I still have partial hearing loss in that ear. They weren't upset about losing me. They were furious about losing their meal ticket. Rick actually screamed, "Who's going to pay the bills now, you ungrateful little bitch?" The night before I was set to leave, they ransacked my room and found my hidden money. They took every penny. I left for college with nothing but a backpack of clothes and my scholarship papers. I never looked back. College was its own struggle. I had no money, no support system, and PTSD that would wake me screaming in the middle of the night. But for the first time, I was free. I worked 3 campus jobs while maintaining a full course load. I lived on ramen and free campus events with food. I slept on the library couches some nights when my roommate had her boyfriend over. But slowly, I built a life. The university had free counseling services, and a compassionate therapist helped me begin to process the years of trauma. I made real friends who showed me what healthy relationships looked like. I graduated with honors and landed an entry-level job at a tech company. Over the next 6 years, I worked my way up from assistant to senior product manager. I saved obsessively, a habit born from years of having everything taken from me. I bought a small house in a different state, started a side business in digital marketing that began to take off, and even began dating someone who knew about my past and still loved me anyway. I legally changed my name, got a new social security number through a protected person program, moved 3 times, and cut all ties to my hometown except for occasional emails with Ms. Williams, my former English teacher. I thought I was finally free. Last month, I was at a professional conference in Chicago when I froze in the middle of the hotel lobby. There, sitting in one of the armchairs reading a magazine, was Diane. My first instinct was that I was hallucinating. It couldn't be her. Not here. Not now. Not 2,000 miles from where I'd left her. But when she looked up and our eyes met, I knew it was real. She looked older, her face more lined from years of drinking, but it was unmistakably her. "Alexandra?" she said, using my birth name. A name I hadn't used in years. I almost ran, but something rooted me to the spot. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was some twisted need for closure. She approached me with tears in her eyes, acting as if we were long-lost family rather than abuser and victim. "I've been looking for you for so long," she said, voice trembling. "I've changed, I swear. I've been sober for 3 years. Rick and I split up. I just want to make amends." I should have walked away. I should have told her exactly what I thought of her amends. Instead, I agreed to meet her for coffee the next morning. I told myself it was to get answers, to finally confront her, but part of me, the broken child still buried inside, wanted desperately to believe she had changed. Over coffee, she put on the performance of a lifetime, tears streaming down her face as she apologized for not being the mother I should have been. She claimed she'd been in therapy, that she realized the mistakes she'd made. She said she'd been searching for me for years to make things right. "I was sick back then," she said. "The drinking, the men, the way I treated you, I was a monster. But I'm different now. I've done the work. I just want a chance to know the amazing woman you've become." Against every rational thought in my head, something in me wavered. What if she had changed? What if this was a chance to heal that last broken piece inside me? We exchanged numbers. She told me she was living in a small apartment in Minneapolis, working as a receptionist at a dental office. She said she'd been sober since a DUI 3 years ago gave her a wake-up call. Over the next few weeks, we talked regularly. She seemed genuinely interested in my life, my work, my home. When I mentioned I was taking a week off to relax at home, she asked if she could visit, just to talk more, to really reconnect. Foolishly, I agreed. When Diane arrived at my house, she seemed impressed, but not overly so. She brought a small gift, a houseplant and a framed photo of me as a child, one I'd never seen before. For the first few days, everything seemed fine. She cooked dinner, we talked about neutral topics, and she kept a respectful distance emotionally. Gradually, though, things began to shift. She started asking more questions about my finances. How much did my house cost? What was my salary? Was my business profitable? Did I have investments? She mentioned she was between apartments and made comments about how much she loved my guest room. Still, I wanted to believe her. Maybe she was just taking an interest in my success? Maybe she was proud of me? Then came the emergencies. First, her car broke down and needed $2,000 in repairs. Then she had an outstanding medical bill that was going to collections. I hesitated but paid both times, telling myself it was a small price for peace. My boyfriend was suspicious from the start. Something's not right, he kept saying. Why now? Why after all these years? But I dismissed his concerns. I wanted so badly to believe I could have this one piece of normal life, a mother who loved me. 3 weeks into her stay, I came home early from work with a migraine. As I approached my bedroom to lie down, I heard Diane on the phone through the guest room door. "Yeah, I'm still at her place," she was saying, laughing. "You wouldn't believe this house, Shelley. And she's loaded, like seriously loaded. She paid for my car repairs without even blinking." My blood ran cold as I listened. "No, it's going perfectly. She actually believes I want to be her mommy again." Another laugh. "I know. After all the shit we put her through, you'd think she'd be smarter, but she's so desperate for a mother figure that she's falling for everything." I felt sick as she continued. "The plan's working perfectly. Another month of the Loving Mother Act, and I'll be moving in permanently. She'll be supporting me for the rest of my life. It's the least she can do after all those years we fed and housed her ungrateful ass." I must have made a noise because suddenly the phone call ended and Diane opened the door. Seeing my face, she knew I'd heard everything. "Alexandra, I can explain," she started, but I cut her off. "Get out," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "Get out of my house right now." "Don't be ridiculous," she said, dropping the act completely. Her face hardened into the cruel expression I remembered from childhood. "After everything I did for you? I raised you. I put a roof over your head. You owe me." "I owe you," I screamed, years of repressed fury finally erupting. "You forced me to work like a slave. You stole my childhood. You took every penny I earned and spent it on booze." She sneered. "You were an investment and now I'm collecting. Rick always said you'd be worth something someday." That's when I discovered Rick wasn't out of the picture at all. They were still together, and he was waiting for her signal to join her at my place. They had planned to both move in and live off me indefinitely. I called the police to escort her out. As they led her away, she screamed that I was nothing without her, and that I'd regret this. The officers recommended I get a restraining order, which I did immediately. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Within a week, I started getting calls from unknown numbers. When I answered, it was either Rick's breathing or hang-up calls. My work email was flooded with messages from fake accounts, all containing variations of "ungrateful daughter" and "you'll be sorry." Then I came home one day to find my back door's lock had been tampered with. Nothing was taken, but someone had clearly tried to break in. I installed a security system the next day. The final straw came when my boyfriend's car was vandalized in his driveway. Ungrateful, scratched into the paint. That's when I knew this wouldn't end without more drastic measures. I needed closure. Not just legal protection, but psychological closure. After years of therapy, I understood that what I really needed was to take back the power they had stolen from me as a child. So I formulated a plan. I called Diane from a burner phone, disguising my voice as a secretary. I told her she'd won a luxury Mediterranean cruise for two in a sweepstakes she'd entered at a local mall. Predictably, she was ecstatic. When I revealed it was actually me, I told her I'd been thinking about what happened. "Maybe you're right," I said, forcing the words out. "Maybe I do owe you something for raising me. I'm willing to make peace. Let's take this trip together, a fresh start." She was suspicious at first, but greed won out. I could practically hear her salivating at the thought of a free luxury vacation. I told her I'd booked a 2-week tour of Greece, Turkey, and Italy, all expenses paid. "Bring Rick too," I said, knowing she would. "I want to make amends with both of you." Over the next month, I made all the arrangements. I sent them official-looking itineraries, had them get passports, which they made me pay for, and told them to pack for 2 weeks in the Mediterranean sun. I even bought them new luggage as a gesture of goodwill. What they didn't know was that I had only purchased one-way tickets to Athens. No hotel reservations, no cruise bookings, no return flights. Nothing. I insisted on driving them to the airport myself. During the drive, they talked excitedly about all the quality time we'd spend together. Rick actually had the audacity to ask if my house had a spare room they could stay in for a while after the trip. I forced myself to smile and say we'd talk about it later. At the international terminal, I checked them in for their flight. We went through security together, and at the gate, I excused myself to use the restroom. Instead, I walked straight out of the airport, drove home, and blocked their numbers. But I wasn't done yet. Before they left, I had secretly placed their car in long-term airport parking, paying for just one day. I had also contacted the landlord of their rundown apartment. I had gotten the address from the mail forwarded to my house, and anonymously informed him that his tenants had abandoned the property and fled the country. I enclosed their first and last month's rent as an anonymous concerned friend, so he wouldn't file a missing persons report. I also sent an anonymous tip to Rick's parole officer, yes, he had one for his last DUI, that he had left the country without permission. They landed in Athens with no return tickets, no hotel reservations, no tour bookings, maxed out credit cards, no car waiting at home, no apartment to return to, a parole violation in progress. I later learned through my former English teacher, who somehow still knew people from my hometown, that Rick was arrested upon their eventual return to the U.S. Diane was living in a homeless shelter, telling anyone who would listen about her psychotic daughter who had abandoned them in Greece. It's been 6 months. I've moved to a new house in a gated community with security cameras. I've changed my phone number, email addresses, and even switched jobs to a fully remote position so they can't find me at an office. The nightmares have finally started to subside. My therapist says what I did was an empowering act of closure, though perhaps an extreme one. My boyfriend proposed last month, and for the first time, I'm starting to believe I might actually have a normal, happy future. I know some people might think I went too far, but after everything they put me through, the years of forced labor, the physical and emotional abuse, the stolen childhood, I can't bring myself to feel bad about it. They stole my past. I refuse to let them steal my future too. Am I the a-hole for abandoning my abusive ex-stepmom and her husband in Greece after they tried to worm their way back into my life to steal my money? Edit 1. Thank you all for the supportive comments. To address some common questions, yes, I've spoken to my lawyer about potential legal ramifications. Since they're adults who voluntarily got on a plane, and I was under no legal obligation to accompany them on the trip, there's nothing illegal about what I did. For those asking about my half-brother, he was removed by CPS years ago and adopted by a foster family. We reconnected recently through social media, and he's doing well. He has no contact with Diane or Rick either. Several people have asked if I've sought therapy. Yes, I've been in therapy for years dealing with the trauma. My therapist has been my rock through all of this. To the person who asked if I feel guilty, no, I don't. What I feel is free. Edit 2. I just received word that Diane is back in the country and has been telling people she's going to make me pay for what I did. I've already alerted my lawyer and local police. My security system has been upgraded, and I'm in the process of creating an LLC to purchase my next home so my name won't be on public property records. This isn't over, but I'm no longer afraid. I'm not a helpless child anymore.